Hello everyone! Today, we'll be seeing how fast Zekrom can beat Pokemon Moon in a solo run challenge. Let's get straight into the video. This is my second Pokemon Moon solo run so far. The rest of the year for Daily December will all be Pokemon Moon runs as I slowly try and learn the game. The last run I did, technically the first one, was Reshiram, and that Pokemon ended up having a bunch of struggle points, but it overall played nicely. And that video was definitely longer than normal because I was trying to go over the story of the game and stuff like that. I'm definitely not going to be doing that with Zekrom. I'm going to try and just only talk about the necessary parts of the run, so if you want to know the story, make sure you watch Reshiram first. And also, as I start this run, I forgot to have my timer set to 4 minutes to account for the 4-minute intro that I didn't have to watch, but I'll add that time at the end of the run, so just ignore it for now. But let's look at the stats while we're at it. We have 100 HP, 150 attack, 120 defense and special attack, 100 special defense, and 90 speed. We're also in the slow level up group just like Reshiram was. Having 150 attack is going to be incredibly nice to have, and 120 special attack is still pretty respectful, but there is one disadvantage Zekrom's going to have to deal with. Our best physical electric type move right now is Thunderfang, which we started at level 1 with Dragon Rage. We don't get another good one until level 50 where we get Fusion Bolt, so we're going to have to wait a while on that end, and Dragon Claw's at level 54. So our main same type attack bonus moves are going to have to use our lower offensive stat. But if we take a look at the rest of our moveset, we get Imprison at level 8, which is just pointless, and then we get Ancient Power, then Thunderbolt at level 22, followed by Dragon Breath, Slash, Zen Headbutt, which is physical, Fusion Bolt, Dragon Claw, Imprison again, Crunch, Thunder, Outrage, Hyper Voice, and Bolt Strike. It's such a shame we're not going to have access to Bolt Strike, but technically, there is a way to get access to it. For some reason, starting Gen 7 with the move reminder, you know, the person you have to give a heart scale to at the Pokemon League Center, you can give her a heart scale and she can teach you any of your level up moves, even a level 100 move. So if I want to, when I get to the Mount Lanikia Pokemon Center, I could get Bolt Strike for the League, but honestly, it's just a physical version of Thunder, just with a bit more accuracy and power. I'm not really sure I'm going to use that move. And if we also take a look on the right hand side of the screen at our TM Learn set, we get a lot of really good coverage. We get Dragon Claw, Hidden Power, Thunderbolt, Thunder, Charge Beam, Volt Switch, pretty much all the electric type moves. In addition to moves like Return, Psychic, Shadow Ball, Rock Tomb, Echoed Voice, Steel Wing, Focus Blast, Shadow Claw, Fly, Rock Slide, Dragon Tail, Flash Cannon, and Wild Charge. So basically most of the coverage that we'll ever need. It's a shame though that this Pokemon can't learn Brick Break because this is one of the first major TMs you can get, so I would have to wait until I can purchase Focus Blast at Pawnee Island. And as we go through the rest of the early game, pretty much fighting any wild Pokemon or trainer we come across because Generation 7 no longer has trainer boosted experience, so I need to do pretty much all the training possible, especially since we're in the slow group. Let's talk about our ability, Hidden Power, and Nature. Our ability is Terravolt, which is essentially just another clone of Mold Breaker. The opponent's abilities cannot affect our damage output, so meaning things like Sturdy, Flash Fire, Volt Absorb, those will not work. And our Hidden Power typing is actually Hidden Power Bug. This is a pretty strange Hidden Power typing you may think, but there are a couple of niche uses for it that completely justify it. I'll go over it once we get to that point. And our Nature is Naive for extra speed and less special defense. The reason we need extra speed is because the Alola region, even though Gen 7 have the lowest average base speed among all of its Pokemon, I have no idea why, the enemy Pokemon have very high speed stats, so I do want to have the extra speed. Although plus attack would have been a good Nature too. Also, if you ever see on the overlay at some point that some of the Island Kahuna's faces are on the badge tracker, just ignore that. I will end up fixing that later. I have those set to hotkeys on my keyboard through OBS, so I might have just hit the button by accident. I can then rescue the old man in the berry fields from Team Skull and then make my way towards the very first trial, the normal trial. Remember when I mentioned earlier it was a little upsetting this thing couldn't learn Brick Break? Well, the Brick Break TM is here, and in Pokemon Moon, I fight Alolan Raticate, which is weak to fighting moves. Not scratch that, it's double weak to fighting moves. Unlike if this was Pokemon Sun where I fight Gumshoos, that's just regular weak to fighting. But oh well, I think we'll be fine without it, so let's check out the fight. As soon as I start the battle, Raticate gets a defense boost, meaning it would be a disadvantage if I were to use Thunderfang, but Dragon Rage go Burr. Yep, just a complete one-shot with Dragon Rage, nothing to see here. I can then wrap up the rest of the errands I have to do on this island, such as go through Route 3 and rescue Cosmog in the Melee Meadow, and then make my way back to Iki Town. Pretty much right away, like within 20 minutes of playing the game on 4x speed, so about an hour on 3DS speed, you can fight the first Kahuna battle against Hala. But Hala is actually a very tough battle. He has 3 Pokemon, his Mankey likes to use Focus Energy and Karate Chop, and his Makuhita has Sand Attack, and his Crabrawler is the one that uses a Z move. So I want to make sure I get some training before that. But when I defeat my rival Hau here after the Melee Meadow, I get to level 15 and learn the move Ancient Power. I can definitely use this move to get an Omni Boost in order to win the fight, but I'm not 100% sure if that'll be enough. But let's give it a try. He leads off with Mankey, and Zekrom is level 15. I'm going to go ahead and use Dragon Rage, and it's an unfortunate thing that the Mankey has more than 40 HP. Then on the Makuhita, it goes for Fake Out, and it does get off 1 or 2 Sand Attacks on me, which is very annoying, but I do end up knocking it out. Last up is the Crabrawler. I use Dragon Rage, it misses, and then All Out Plummeting doesn't really do that much damage. But I ended up losing here because of how many moves I kept missing. So yep, there goes my first reset. On the second attempt, I don't get nearly as unlucky with Sand Attacks, and I do defeat Hala's entire team using Dragon Rage. So yeah, only a second try Hala, I'll take it. And with that, Melee Island is finished. And I also do get access to Tauros. Before I leave the island though, there's a few items I'm going to be getting around Melee Island. For example, in 10 Carat Hill, I can get access to a Heartstone and a Nugget. This will boost the power of Rock-type moves by 20%, which does include Ancient Power. I can definitely see this move being useful for the Fire Trial. And inside the Hau'oli City Hall, I can go ahead and get myself a Shell Bell from the Delibird. This is a very useful item to have in addition to the Quick Claw because the leftovers are in the post-game. There also is an Expert Belt that I could have gotten near the Melee Meadow inside the Seaside Cave, but I ended up not getting it. I don't know why, I think I just forgot about it. This is my second ever run after all, and with those items obtained we can go to Akala Island. The main focus points of this island are the Water Trial with Lana, the Fire type trial with Kwawe, and the Grass type trial with Mallow. I don't really know if I'm going to struggle with any of them, potentially I might struggle with the Grass trial, but funnily enough I actually end up losing to Sina right here. Her Glaceon ends up knocking me out, but just like with a lot of the rival fights in this game, you actually get to progress whether you win or lose the fight. I don't know why, there's a lot of fights in Sun and Moon that act like this, so for fights where you're not required to win, I don't count it as a reset or a blackout. I'll just continue the run as normal. And while I don't think I'll have any problems with the Water Trial, I still take on a lot of the surrounding trainers just because the slow level up group is very bad in Gen 7. But after I do some of the surrounding trainers, including taking on Gladion, I honestly feel ready. So I'm going to go head into Brooklet Hill, get myself a rare candy, and then go take on the Totem Pokemon Wishiwashi. In the fight, Totem Wishiwashi gets a defense boost. I go ahead and use Thunderfang doing more than half, but then it ends up healing itself with a held Citrus Berry. But on the bright side, I do end up paralyzing it. I go ahead and knock out the Alomomola the Wishiwashi summons, and then afterwards, it summons another Wishiwashi. I'll just go ahead and knock that out real quick. The totems can only summon up to 2 Pokemon in this game. I don't know if the Ultra games changed that, but it doesn't really matter though. Thunderfang can make quick work of it. Although, I do want to mention something. I end up getting a blackout on the Team Skull Grunts that block off the Battle Royale place, because not only I end up getting poisoned, but I also ended up hitting myself in confusion a ridiculous amount of times. And if you're wondering why it's a ridiculous amount of times, well, let me answer this for you. In Generation 7, they nerfed the chance of hitting yourself in confusion from 50% down to 30%, so it makes moves like Confuse Ray not nearly as annoying. But despite that fact, I end up hitting myself enough times to where Zekrom ends up getting its very first blackout. If you're wondering why I couldn't use Dragon Rage, it's because an earlier Pokemon disabled it. But after I come back to the Team Skull Grunt, I can make quick work of it from there, clear out the Battle Royale section, and then before I enter the Whale of Volcano Park, I can go enter the Mega Mart. Whenever you do your shopping here, you're actually given a 50% off coupon while you're here, so it's always good to mass buy like your potions and repels here. And if you also give a Drowsy $1,000, he will go ahead and give you the TM for rest. But funnily enough, I actually decide not to buy anything else here. It's because earlier in the game, I think I ended up buying enough repels to where I didn't need to do that, but it's always a good idea to do your shopping there anyway. And anyway, it doesn't matter. We can enter the Whale of Volcano Park and go take on the Fire Trial. There is something I could get here if I need it. There is a TM for Rock Tomb that I could get, and I do go ahead and get it. This move is going to be pretty decent against the Totem Pokemon Salazzle. You may be wondering, how is it different from Ancient Power? Well, 1, Rock Tomb is a physical move, and 2, during the Salazzle fight, it actually gets a special defense boost, so Rock Tomb will actually be better. So let's go ahead and take on the Totem Salazzle. As mentioned earlier, at the start of the fight, the Salazzle gets a special defense boost. I go ahead and use Rock Tomb, dealing more than half as it hits me with a pretty weak Flame Burst. I can then use another Rock Tomb on the Salazzle to knock it out. So now the Salandit is remaining, and all it did was just use a taunt. Yeah, normally this fight is pretty dang hard for some Pokemon, but Zekrom just completely destroyed it. And with Whale of Volcano behind us, we can go through Route 8 and head our way to the west side of the island to enter the Lush Forest for the Grass Trial. There are some decent trainers on the way there, and I do plan to fight a lot of them. And by the time I arrive at the Lush Forest, I feel pretty confident. So let's go ahead and take on the Grass-type Totem Pokemon, Lurantis. During the Lurantis fight, it gets a boost to its speed stat. I have the move Echoed Voice now on my moveset, and I have the Silk Scarf equipped. This move will slowly get more and more powerful as I keep using it. I keep spamming Echoed Voice and I do knock out the Trumbeak. This was probably a mistake. I probably should not have knocked out the Trumbeak, because with the Trumbeak knocked out, it could summon Cast Form, which will use Sunny Day and make the Lurantis' signature move Solar Blade do 1 turn damage. So that would actually be pretty bad, and because of that mistake, I end up getting a reset here. Honestly, I was doomed from the start at that fight anyway, because I did hit myself in confusion, which does break the Echoed Voice chain. I knock out the Trumbeak again, and then switch on over to the Lurantis, and my Echoed Voice nearly kills it. So I go ahead and use another Echoed Voice, and despite it using Synthesis, the sun wasn't up yet, so it couldn't heal as much HP as it could have, and I can go ahead and knock out the Cast Form last. Honestly, looking back at this run, I have Hidden Power Bug. I received the TM for Hidden Power at the Pokemon Nursery, so it definitely would have been a better choice to use Hidden Power Bug, but either way, it only took 1 reset. Well, technically a blackout. I blacked out on that loss, but you know what I mean. And with the 3 trials on Akala Island finished, the next major thing I need to do is take on the Grand Kahuna Olivia. Olivia uses Rock-type Pokemon, and Reshiram struggled at her pretty dang bad. But the one advantage that both Reshiram and Zekrom currently has is that the abilities Terra Volt and Turbo Blaze end up acting like Mold Breakers, so Sturdy from all 3 of her Pokemon will not do anything. But before I take on the Grand Kahuna Olivia fight, I do go to the TM shop in Konikoni City and buy myself the TM for Shadow Claw. This move won't help for the Olivia fight, but it'll be very helpful for the Ghost type trial later on Ula Ula Island. And fortunately for Zekrom, the Plumira fight right before Olivia doesn't provide a reset or a blackout, so I can just go ahead and take on Olivia right away. Hopefully, I don't end up having a reset here like Reshiram did. Olivia leads off with Nose Pass. I do have the move Rest taught to Zekrom, and I am holding a Chestoberry just in case I get hit with moves like Thunder Wave. But honestly, I didn't even really need Rest, because I ended up completely destroying Olivia, and even though her Lycanroc got access to using the move Continental Crush, it only did like half damage to Zekrom because of how good my defensive stats are. And yeah, Zekrom ends up first trying Olivia. Even if we count the 4 minutes that the timer should have had, Zekrom ended up beating Olivia in under an hour, something not even Reshiram can say. Could it be possible that Pokemon Moon is the first Pokemon game where, in a solo run speedrun challenge, Zekrom will actually outperform Reshiram? I do wonder, but let's not think about that right now. We have to head to the Hotel Grand Resort and take a boat to the Aether Paradise for a little side quest, including knocking out the Ultra Beast Nihilego. Fun fact, there's actually a turn limit to this fight, and if you somehow don't knock it out in time, it just runs away, which is pretty funny. And with all that stuff done, we can make our way to the next island, Ula Ula Island. There are 2 trials on this island, an electric trial on Mount Hakulani. I still have to look up what that mountain is called because I keep mixing it up with Mount Lanakia, which is next door, as well as the ghost type trial at the abandoned grocery store. But before I get to any of that, How does challenge me to a battle as soon as I get off the ship, and this rival fight is very difficult. This is the first fight where he has Alolan Raichu. The thing is super fast and has Stab Psychic. It really does hurt. But on the bright side though, you're not required to win the fight. Some of you guys may be upset with the amount of fights in this game you just don't have to win, but to make up for it, there are plenty of fights near the end of the game you do have to win. For example, the final battle with How on top of Mount Lanakia before the Pokemon League, that one you're required to win. And for example, the 2 battles with Lusamine, the first one you don't have to win, but the second one you do. So at least you do have to win the harder fights. And inside of Mali City, which is the first city on Ula Ula Island, I can talk to this tourist in the library to get the TM for Fly. This is a very great physical flying type move to have for coverage. And for some reason, Zekrom doesn't learn Aerial Ace. I don't know why. I've supposedly heard Gen 7 got rid of many Pokemon's abilities to learn Aerial Ace, but I'm pretty sure that was a later game, but who knows. At the very top of this mountain, before you can take on the electric type trial, you do have to take on Mullane. He's just a guy who uses steel types, and in the Ultra games, he ends up being a member of the Elite Four as a steel type. And his Pokemon can be kinda difficult, but not really difficult for Zekrom. But before we talk about the Mullane fight and the electric trial, we have to enter the Mount Hakunali Pokemon Center and go buy some vitamins. And today's Vitamin of the Day are 5 protein, 4 carbos, and 3 calcium. We need all the attack and speed we can get, and the calcium was just because I had leftover money. We do still rely on some special moves, like for example Thunderbolt. But anyway, once we defeat Mullane, we can go take on the electric type trial and face on the totem Vikavolt. Vikavolt starts the fight with an Omni Boost. All of its stats get +1. I go ahead and use 1 Rock Tomb, doing less than half, which is a little unfortunate, but that's fine. I can switch over to Ancient Power just to do some more chip damage and hopefully get a boost. I do not unfortunately get a boost, but that's fine though. By the time I defeat the Vikavolt, the Charjabug really can't do anything to me. It's a very weak ally Pokemon. So yeah, that was a very easy fight. Also, I did forget to mention I did get a blackout to Mullane just because I wasn't prepared, but I just went back and quickly beat him on the second try. Forgot to mention that. And now on Ula Ula Island, the next trial is the Ghost type trial with the Totem Mimikyu. The Totem Mimikyu, honestly, I would consider it to be the hardest Totem fight in the entire game because of its ability Disguise. but since Terravolt acts like Mold Breaker, its ability Disguise cannot affect my damage output, so it's as if it doesn't even have that ability. And if you're wondering, like when the Disguise is broken, if Mimikyu loses an eighth of its health, that part of its ability wasn't added till Gen 8. That was them trying to nerf the ability. So in Gen 7 it is very powerful. But there are a couple of other things I gotta do before I can take on the Ghost Trial, such as battling Guzma in the Mali City Park, and then unlock the ability to use Mudsdale as a ride Pokemon. Mudsdale is honestly the least useful ride Pokemon in the entire game. It's only really helpful for this one route to my knowledge, plus parts of the Pawnee Canyon. And then after that we can head our way to the Aether House, do some more Team Skull battles, and then afterwards Acerola says we can now challenge the Ghost type trial. So let's not waste any more time, let's go take on the Ghost Trial Totem Mimikyu. The Totem Mimikyu, just like the Totem Vikavolt, does start off with an Omni Boost. I can go ahead and use a turn 1 Shadow Claw. It does a lot of damage to me with Play Rough, but then Shadow Claw gets a clutch critical hit, actually one-shotting the Mimikyu. That is actually insane. Honestly, if I didn't get that crit one-shot, the Totem Mimikyu probably would have killed me, and I probably would have had some resets here. But the Totem Mimikyu does have access to the move Mimic, which it can waste its first turn with, so the fight's still winnable even without a crit. But hey, I'll take that. And after the Ghost Trial is finished, before we can take on the Island Kahuna Nanu, we have to do the whole Po Town side quest of the game, and on our way there, we stop by Grimsley and he gives us the ride Pokemon Sharpedo. It's basically just Tauros on the water. It's very fast too. And the reason I have a Tentacool is because before you can enter Po Town, as you can see here, you have to do a double battle against 2 Team Skullgrunts. They refuse to challenge you if you only have 1 Pokemon. So this part right here is the only mandatory spot where you have to have a second Pokemon. But using a Tentacool and a Dive Ball, it's a pretty high chance of catching. And fortunately, I can do the math right here. In Generation 7, the odds of catching a Tentacool with a Dive Ball is 90%. So yeah, I'm essentially guaranteed, especially since I get 10 Dive Balls from that trial. So yep, it's essentially a free Pokemon. But either way, I can go enter Po Town, get myself a rare candy, and then go take on Guzma in the boss's mansion. The Guzma fights haven't really been that hard because his main Golisopod is part water type, and for some reason, if he chooses not to use First Impression, he wastes his first turn with Swords Dance, and that's kinda his fault for doing that. But with all of Po Town cleared out, I can now head back to Mali City and go take on Nanu for my trial before I go to the Aether Foundation. This is generally one of the hardest totem fights. These totem fights actually get progressively more difficult. I will always say the hardest Kahuna fight is Hapu on Pawnee Island, and second hardest is definitely Nanu, third hardest being Olivia. But sometimes Olivia is harder depending on your type matchups. But anyway, let's go take on Nanu. Nanu leads off with Sableye. I now have a new move on my moveset to help out with this fight. I have Hidden Power Bug. This will deal super effective damage to his Krokorok and to his Persian. Although my first attempt he ended up switching to his Krokorok, I hit myself in confusion at one point, and his Krokorok ends up knocking me out with Earthquake. On the second attempt when I get to his Ace Persian, I just realized something. Stab Thunderbolt does more damage than a super effective Hidden Power Bug. So honestly, Hidden Power Bug might only be useful for the Krokorok since I can't use Thunderbolt on it. But seeing how much damage Thunderbolt even did to the Persian, it made me realize I need to farm for an Ancient Power Omni Boost at the start of the fight. It's going to be the only way I can win reasonably. And that is something I do get on my third battle against him. I get an Omni Boost on the Sableye after it gets sent out again, and due to the Omni Boost, I can outspeed and one-shot the Persian. So there we go. Now we have to head through the Aether Foundation, fight a lot of the employees, as well as take on Guzma, as well as the first battle against Lusamine. You are required to win the battle against Guzma, but you're not required to win against the battle with Lusamine. But I would still prefer to win though, because I would like the experience. I'm going to have a rule in place in my Gen 7 runs. I'm not going to heavily vocalize the rule, it's more like an unspoken rule. For the fights where you're not required to win, I will always attempt to win. Like for example, I'm not going to do what the speedruns do and just die as soon as possible to move on, because it doesn't really feel in the spirit of the challenge, so I will attempt to win. However though, things don't go completely smooth at the Aether Foundation. I end up getting a blackout on Guzma because I did not really play the fight properly, and I ended up blacking out to the Mali City Center. And what's really annoying is you can't fly back to the Aether Paradise, you gotta go back to the pier and go take a boat back. So yeah, that was pretty annoying. However though, as soon as I come back, I do defeat Guzma on the second try, and I go attempt to fight Lusamine. If I were to have a rule like forcing myself to win all of these fights where you don't have to win, it would absolutely be an annoying thing to have to save before this fight and reset if I lose, because there's like a 2-minute cutscene on 4 times speed, and it's really annoying. Imagine having to go through this every time. Unfortunately though, against Lusamine, I really don't have a good answer for her Clefable, and she does end up knocking me out just because my moves aren't that good enough. So I do end up losing the fight, which does give a time advantage over Pokemon that have to win, but like I said, all I can do is attempt to win, and if I don't win, then oh well. I still have to beat her the second time around anyway, where she's actually harder. Anyway, that's the end of the Aether Foundation stuff. We can now head to our next island, Pawnee Island. The only events here are you have to do the Kahuna battle against Hapu as soon as she becomes the Island Kahuna, as well as going through the vast Pawnee Canyon with all of its trainers, and then at the very end you do a captainless trial against a Totem Komodo. But before I do any of that, there are a couple of things I need to get. For example, I go back to Hau'oli City on Mele Mele Island, and I can go to this shop right here and actually purchase myself a Zap Plate. This boosts the power of electric type moves by 20%. I do also grab the Fist Plate here as well. These are the easiest ways to get type boosting items for those respective typings. I made a guide in my Discord server for the best locations, and the magnet is straight up unobtainable. You have to find them on wild magnemites and stuff, so getting the Zap Plate is the best way to go. And also, in the Pawnee Plains right here, there are a lot of very good and scary trainers, really good for experience too. I generally fight everyone here if I'm in the slow level up group, because you gotta remember, the next Kahuna fight is against Hapu, who uses ground type Pokemon, so I do need to be wary of it. And the 3 trees here do give super effective type reducing berries, which can be a good strategy for 1 or 2 fights for some Pokemon, but I don't really need any of them today. And while doing the training here, I do get a blackout to this Ace trainer who uses a Garbodor and a Toxapex. This fight is generally pretty hard. I try to avoid fighting her with Pokemon unless I'm confident that I can win, but I do end up going back into the fight anyway because I really do want the XP, but I end up getting another blackout and a reset because of it. Absolutely worth it. Anyway, with all the training done, I can now get Machamp registered to my Ride Pokemon pager. This Pokemon will essentially just help me with strength when I need it. And then I can watch Hapu become the new Kahuna, do some errands on Executor Island, as well as take on some Team Skull grunts. And now with Team Skull defeated, we can go take on the Island Kahuna Hapu. But before I do that, I use a bunch of my rare candies to get Zekrom to level 54. And as I get myself to this level, I now have the moves Fusion Bolt and Dragon Claw on my Learn set. These are going to be very good moves for Zekrom to have. But I'm still not done with errands just yet. I do fly back to the Sea Folk Village on Pawnee Island, and I go to the mart here and purchase myself the TM for Focus Miss. This move is unfortunately going to be needed not just for Hapu, but it'll also help out with the Olivia fight in the Pokemon League. I go ahead and teach this move in the place of Shadow Claw, and with these moves obtained, I feel more than ready to go take on Hapu. So let's get started. Hapu leads off with a Alolan Dug trio. My Zekrom is holding an air balloon. I got this in the Mali City Garden. You can only get it during the day if you tell a girl the lake is shaped like a Gyarados. For one turn, this will prevent her Pokemon from hitting me with a ground type move right away. They do unfortunately know that I have an air balloon because the text box gets activated when I enter the battle. The whole point of the air balloon is just to prevent the Dugtrio from using like a turn 1 earthquake or something. And this fight ends up being the most difficult fight in the entire run. I am not kidding, by the time I actually win here, my reset counter is now at 25. I end up winning because I need Focus Blast to hit the Dugtrio for a 1-hit, and then on the Mudsdale, I need Focus Blast to hit again. Then on the Flygon, I can switch over to Dragon Claw and one-shot it, and then on the Gastrodon, while I don't have a move that can one-shot it, two-shotting it with Dragon Claw will be enough, although it definitely does look like a range. I'm hoping I can hit the range, and sadly I don't, but I somehow live at 2 HP remaining. This fight was dangerously close, and I got so many resets here. Honestly, at the time, I did not know about the SOS training giving good EVs. If I had known this, I actually would have trained early game for some attack EVs, because that definitely would have helped make the difference here. But it doesn't matter. With 4 Kahunas defeated, I gotta go through the Pawnee Canyon, defeat pretty much every trainer here for experience, and go take on the Captain List trial at the very end. So honestly, let's just skip straight ahead to the totem battle against Kommo-o. Let's do this. This is the last totem fight in the game. And sadly, even though this is the last one, Kommo-o is not that good of a totem fight. It has so many weaknesses. It normally likes to use a turn 1 Protect, so that way it can summon a helper. But I can just two-shot the Kommo-o with Dragon Claw, and the Scizor being out I will admit is kind of annoying, but I do have Fusion Bolt which can do an easy one-shot to it. And now with the final totem fight cleared out, there's not many fights left in the game. The next major fight is the second battle with Lusamine. Before I do the fight, I use the rest of my rare candies to get from level 57 to level 61. And I equip a Zap Plate for the fight so I can get some extra damage out of Fusion Bolt. Lusamine starts off with her Clefable. All of her Pokemon do receive some sort of stat boost, and the Clefable receives a special defense one. But it's not like that really matters. Then on the Beware, I two-shot it with Zen Headbutt. This is not the right choice. Its ability Fluffy makes it take half damage from physical moves. I should have used Focus Blast on it. But it doesn't matter, it's not like I'm weak to fighting type moves or anything like that. And I can just completely destroy the rest of her team. And with Lusamine finally defeated, we can head back to the real world and make our way towards the Pokemon League. Before I do that though, there are 2 mandatory fights. There's a battle with Gladion, and then there's a rival with Hau. The battle with Hau and the battle with Gladion here, you're required to win both of those. So let's go do it. Against Gladion, he leads off with a Crobat. This is going to be very easy for Zekrom to deal with. It is a complete one-shot with Fusion Bolt, but it does outspeed. Next up is Silvally holding a Fire Memory. Surprisingly, Fusion Bolt doesn't one-shot it. The attack EVs would be nice right about now. Then on the Weavile, I go ahead and use Fusion Bolt again, and last up is Lucario. I just used Fusion Bolt. I did not want to use Focus Blast on it. But with Gladion being a series of almost one-shots, will Hau be any challenge? Spoiler alert, he probably will be. Hau leads off with a Alolan Raichu. This thing is very fast and has powerful moves like Thunderbolt and Psychic. I go ahead and use Dragon Claw for the one-shot, and Psychic does like a quarter to me. Then the Kamala is a one-hit with Fusion Bolt, and then next up is the Primarina. Since I always replace the Grass Starter, he has Primarina. That's fine though, Primarina is very easy with Fusion Bolt, and so is his Flareon. You know, Zekrom has been really destroying this game, with the main exception being Hapu. If I were to do a re-rank of this at some point in 2026, I would definitely do some attack EV training through SOS. I can do it on Akala Island on just a bunch of Pikipeks, because those are the best Pokemon to SOS attack EV train on. Plus, the extra early game experience might help with some of the earlier fights. I gotta go to the Lush Jungle, get another rare candy, and then fly back to Melemele Island and enter the sea, and find myself another rare candy. These are all the rare candies in the game. Those were the last 2. I didn't go over where every rare candy was, but you can just look up a guide of the rare candies. There's like maybe 10 to 12 of them I can get. Not that many, but should be enough for today. And now we can enter the Pokemon League. So let's go take on the final 5 trainers. Let's do this shit. The first member of the Elite Four I choose to take on is Kahili, the flying type user. She leads off with Skarmory, which does have Sturdy, but I don't have to worry about that because Fusion Bolt will one-shot it. Next up is Oricorio, similar thing with its fate. Then the Crobat outspeeds and hits me with Supersonic, but it's not like that'll really do anything. Then I can one-hit the Mandibuzz, as well as defeat the Toucannon as it charges up its signature move. So yep, series of one-shots. Next up is the Fighting type Elite Four member, Hala. He leads off with Hariyama, which usually likes to go Fake Out into Knockoff or Close Combat. It does go for Fake Out, and then it goes for Close Combat, which does hurt, and I end up missing Zen Headbutt. That's a little annoying. Next up is the Primeape. I outspeed and one-shot it, and then the Crabominable does survive my use of Zen Headbutt. Like I said, the attack EVs would have helped here, and I do get a very quick loss. The fight does take a few more tries, but fortunately not that many tries. Although, as I keep saying, if I had had extra attack EVs, this fight would be a lot easier. I should definitely remember to do some SOS attack training when I do this run again in the future. Next up is the Rock-type Elite Four member, Olivia. Olivia leads off with Relicanth. This is going to be a clear and obvious one-hit with Fusion Bolt. Next up is the Carbink. This thing resists a lot of moves and is quite bulky. But fortunately, I can just use 2 Fusion Bolts, but then it ends up going for Reflect, making my physical moves do a lot less. And by the time I try to use Focus Blast, I end up missing too many times, allowing the Carbink to destroy Zekrom. And just like with Hala, Olivia ended up taking a few tries because the Reflect tactics coming from her Carbink were really starting to irritate me. But still, only took a few tries, not a big deal. Next up is the Ghost-type Elite Four member, Acerola. And just like with the Totem Trial with Mimikyu, Shadow Claw is our answer today. I can defeat her lead Sableye, outspeed and one-shot the Frostlass, which was the reason I saved her for last, because that Frostlass is fast. The Palossand is pretty bulky, but it doesn't end up knocking me out. And then Shadow Claw can just deal with the rest of her team pretty easily, including her final Pokemon Drifblim, which has a very awful moveset. It's really bad. But I do survive its Aftermath, which does more damage than any of its moves could do. And with the 4 Elite Four members defeated, before we can claim our title as champion, we gotta take on Professor Kukui. Professor Kukui is a very hard trainer to defeat for a lot of Pokemon, but I feel pretty confident that Zekrom has the ability to do so. So let's go take on the Professor. Professor Kukui leads off with his Lycanroc. I have a slight moveset overhaul. I do have Dragon Claw and Rest on my moveset in addition to the Fist Plate. This is mainly used for Focus Blast for a couple of Pokemon in this fight. And for example, on the Lycanroc, I do use Focus Blast right away, and thanks to the Fist Plate, it will be a one-shot. Next up is the Incineroar. Focus Blast left it at 1 HP. Okay, that is just irritating. Next up is the Ninetales. I go ahead and switch to Focus Blast, it misses, but the Ninetales missed Blizzard. But then I realized, Focus Blast did not do that much damage. I don't think that was the right move to use. I think I should have used Fusion Bolt. On the next attempt, I get past his Lycanroc again, and this time, Focus Blast Doesn't do anything to the Incineroar because I missed both times. Great. And believe it or not, well, I'm sure you'd believe it, but the same thing happened again with the Incineroar. It just keeps dodging my Focus Blasts. This is why I'm upset that Zekrom can't learn Brick Break. It takes me until 38 resets into the run to finally beat him. I can defeat the Lycanroc with Focus Blast. This time Incineroar does one-shot, so it definitely was a range. Then I can Fusion Bolt the Ninetales for a one-shot. And then next up is the Snorlax. I go ahead and just continue using 2 Fusion Bolts. I do not want to use Focus Blast on it. Then the Braviary is a clear and obvious answer. But before I use Fusion Bolt, I am going to use Rest because Braviary is a pretty good Rest target. It does end up doing a lot of damage to me, but it'll be just enough. And thankfully, without access to Terravolt, Magnezone won't be a 2-shot. I can one-shot it with Focus Blast and finally clock in. With a real time of 2 hours, 28 minutes, and 58 seconds. With 38 resets and 8 blackouts at level 67, with a game time after the long-ass credits of 9 hours and 16 minutes. Man, this leaderboard result is something you need to take a look at. If we take a look at the 2 Pokemon we've played so far, Reshiram and Zekrom, Zekrom now has first place overall on the leaderboard. Despite having around 26 more resets than Reshiram, in addition to having a lower game time, Zekrom was 3 minutes faster. I think if Zekrom got a second playthrough, this thing can definitely be sub 220, especially if I planned the entire game around how hard Hot Boo was. But still, we don't have to worry about re-ranks until next year. But anyway, I hope y'all enjoyed this run. This run was definitely longer than my other videos, but since I'm still new to Pokemon Moon, my voiceovers probably will end up being a bit longer than normal just because there's a lot of eventful things that happen and I'm still not 100% sure what things I want to skip. But anyway, please like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more, and be sure to follow me on my socials or support the channel through YouTube memberships. YouTube members get access to the patch files for all the backboard Pokemon we do on stream, as well as member-exclusive re-rank videos that I stream in my Discord server every now and then. So if you're interested in that stuff, become a member today. Tomorrow we will finish off the trio and play through Pokemon Moon with Kyurem. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow as we continue Daily December.